welcome back to another episode of Poly Talks. And the subject of this week's video is something that many people have heard of but are not fully aware of, and that is carbon capture plants, such as the one pictured in this image, which are, many people believe, a critical component of our effort to halt or even reverse climate change. But the politics behind this issue are actually fascinating because while it may seem like a no-brainer, many environmental and climate activists worry that highlighting, funding, investing in these carbon capture plants actually distracts from real environmental efforts because there are several issues with these plants. One such being the cost. It's extremely expensive to remove even 1 ton of carbon dioxide. And if you recall how many tons of carbon dioxide are emitted into the atmosphere each year, gigatons, this simply doesn't almost seem worth it just from the surface. And this is a very small amount of carbon dioxide compared to what is being pumped in the atmosphere right now. So the cost needs to go down a lot more because, of course, money is what motivates people. So the price will be a key factor in how successful this technology is. And we simply have to see how much this technology improves because otherwise it's not a very efficient or effective initiative, and it needs to drastically be refined and reworked in order to be much more cost effective. And then there's the energy use. What's the point of sucking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere if we're just going to have to if we're going to have to power it with energy that was produced from carbon dioxide emissions? It's another key component, and this is what makes this technology so fascinating. Is we need to simultaneously bring down fossil fuel use drastically and transition immensely to renewable energies. Otherwise, we could just be powering these carbon capture plants with fossil fuel generated energy. So, this is another reason why the situation is more nuanced than just pumping CO2 out of the atmosphere. And then it's also tricky to transport. Once we undergo these processes, we then have concentrated carbon dioxide. And this is almost like, you can think of it like nuclear waste. Obviously, it's much less dangerous, but it still poses a massive threat, and leaks and other accidents can happen. And those will require tougher regulations. And this carbon dioxide can ironically be used for oil and gas production. So these projects have to ensure that this is not just feeding back into the cycle of carbon dioxide and gas prevention, and that instead of helping the environment, these technologies aren't just harming the environment by injecting this captured carbon dioxide back. And then, as I mentioned earlier, it won't work without rapid emissions cuts. We need to simultaneously bring down emissions drastically, or else we're not really fixing the problem. We're just slightly making a dent in the symptom of the problem. So this is the deal with carbon capture plants. They are an exciting and innovative new technology. However, they are not a substitute for the actions we need to take to ensure that we have a livable planet in the future. And this is what environmental activists are emphasizing, is that these are not stand-ins for actual solutions and emission cuts. These are technologies that we will have to use most likely, but we'll have to use them in addition to pre-existing solutions. And here's where the political aspect comes in, is many Republicans have been very interested in these carbon capture technologies, which you recall may be slightly fascinating considering that Republicans are typically opposed to climate change action. But the reason these Republicans are interested in it doesn't require merely constructing these plants. Yes, it's expensive. Yes, it takes up space, but it doesn't require the societal, corporational. It doesn't require all of these massive shifts and changes in behavior. So many Republicans see this as a great opportunity to solve the climate crisis without actually having to address the root problem. So, this is another example of where politics comes in to influence climate change, and we can see this relationship directly between politics and political parties in climate change technologies. And this really highlights a technology which has kind of a split persona, a juxtaposition, if you will. It's a necessary step in our efforts to revert the worst of climate change, but it's also a crux that we cannot rely on solely to fix our mistakes, because that requires systematic root change. And so that's what I want everyone to take away from this video, is these carbon capture plants should be viewed with nuance. They should not be viewed with a purely positive connotation or negative connotation, but we should look at the facts, which is that these machines right now, they are taking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, but they won't be effective. They won't be doing their job well enough until we couple that with a massive reduction in emissions. So that's all I want to mention for this video, and I hope it was insightful, and I will come back with a future video soon. Thank you so much for listening to this brief environmental update. See you in the future.